Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So alongside update 1.40 or spec 2, we've got 50 new license tests split into 5 separate categories, and now we're going to move on to the second category of the bunch, Master National A license. So as before with the first video, the same rules apply, so controller only, just to prove that it can be done on the DualSense, preferably no assists at all again, so fully unassisted runs. Once again, I've kind of got to stick to those throughout the entirety of the video. So I'll go through, I'll kind of, slow the footage down when I feel like it needs to be sort of, built upon, and then we'll have a look at the rewards at the end of the video. So let's get straight into it. So up first we've got Master A1. This is going to be Racing Line Basics 1. We're also going to have the exact same layout for the next license. However, one's front wheel drive, one's rear wheel drive. So we've got the 208 GTI here. In terms of this one, to be honest, it took a couple of goes at most. The main kind of concern you've got is kind of as you enter the left-hander is the braking of the vehicle, and it's sort of, pushing the front end down. So you're going to see sort of the end of the barrier there before it sort of dips in more. Use that as a braking zone. Brake rather quite heavily and then just lift off, use your throttle control, get yourself up across the curbs. You can really sort of chew up the curbs here, and I do recommend it. It's very lenient on what will disqualify you and what won't. Again, then just kind of, full power out of the right-hander and literally do not lift. You should be able to give yourself enough momentum to get yourself up on the curb and literally be flat out to the finish. So we cross the line with a 26.423. and the gold medal for A1. Now A2, it's the exact rinse and repeat of A1. However, this time we're using a rear wheel drive car in the form of the RX-7. Once again, it's the exact same layout, so it's kind of the originals to give you a bit of a taster, and then it's going to give you a much more powerful and obviously rear wheel drive vehicle in the form of this RX-7. So it's going to change up how you're going to drive the car, but once again, these same sort of basics apply. You kind of know the layout this time around, you just got to change how you drive the vehicle. So head over to the right hand side. Once again, when the barrier sort of, kind of caves back in on itself, just brake, allow the rear end to kind of slightly kick out, get yourself up across the curb. This was by no means a clean run at all. And then full throttle and lift onto the right hander, get yourself right up over the curb. Again, you may feel the rear end start to kick out. At that point, just start using a bit of throttle control to bring it back in, and then you can be flat out all the way to the finish, and then bring yourself across the line with this one, 25.368 and the gold medal once again. So it's going to change up a little bit now. Those two are very copy paste, just like we had with license National A as well, with the stopping and starting. So we're going to move on to the Julia from 2020 for Master A3, which is going to be hairpins at Autopolis. Now you're going to have this one as a little bit of a different run, so it's an uphill section followed by the hairpin and then a downhill acceleration out. So you're going to go up the hill as much as possible and then begin to look on the right hand side for these boards here. As you're going to see, I'm going to pick the middle board as sort of my braking marker. Bring the car in, brake really heavy, and then bring it up across onto the inside of the corner. You can chew up a lot of curb. Once again, it won't disqualify you, so feel free to run as much as possible. Bring yourself out wide and put the power down, and you should be all good to go. Great handling on this vehicle, rather straightforward. You should be able to get this one done with, plenty of time to spare. 19.068 for that one. So let's move in to A4 next. So A4, I would say, is the hardest of all of the A licenses. As you can see, it's on urban tracks. It's going to be a very enclosed environment at Tokyo Expressway using the very powerful Ferrari F12. So you're going to begin, you're going to move yourself all the way to the left hand side. Try not to even remotely scrape the wall, or else it will disqualify you. That's where most of the challenge comes from. You can see this little sign up here. Use that as a braking marker. Slow the car down and then begin to lift. Then you're going to bring the throttle in rather quite slowly. I wouldn't absolutely go flat out, to bring your car nice and wide to prepare for the next corner. Then use the little markers on the tunnels as a braking marker. Bring yourself in and across, keep yourself as close as possible to this wall, and then angle yourself for this left-hander here. Now, you're going to need an almost sudden right-hand turn here. So as you can see, just use the throttle control to bring it over, balance it with the brakes, and then kind of, be on half throttle, ready to go as powerful as possible before braking and throttle control once again to bring you across to this left-hander. Definitely a difficult layout, and it's really quite difficult to explain. Took me most tries of all of these license tests. It's just very enclosed. The main thing you want to do is be fast, but also avoid those barriers in this really enclosed environment. So let's move on to A5. Very easy, this one, very simple. It's going to be on the brand new track Lake Louise, using a relatively straightforward vehicle in the form of the Focus RS. So snow driving beginner, the first time on the snow in terms of these license tests is going to be a few of these. Now it's not necessarily the most difficult turn, and I really did quite botch it up, but I did manage to get away with it with plenty of time. It does seem that this sort of off-road snow driving is much more lenient in terms of your overall time. So look on your left hand side, use your brake markers, bring it all the way across. I recommend revving it out and try and get in a nice wide angle. As you can see though, my car sort of got all its grip back, and it didn't give me the perfect angle. However, I did get a decent enough exit, and I'm going to cross a line with a 17.457, only just beating the goal time. But like I said, the main thing you want to do is slide it out nice and wide and get yourself a good run out of the corner, and you should get this one nice and easy. Got this one on my first try. Again, very lenient in terms of the overall times on the off-road sections. On to A6 next, another tough one. This time we're using the Genesis G70. We're going to be using it at Grand Valley Highway 1 through a rather awkward section. As you can see, this is Racing Line Intermediate 1. There's going to be 3 of these on the bounce, so yeah, get yourself ready. I would say this is definitely the most difficult of all 3 of them though. So the Genesis, it's a 4-wheel drive vehicle, I believe, so it's rather quite easy. It's not going to kind of break away from you. The main thing is that the sports hards and how heavy this car is really don't kind of make a great mix. So going into the right hander, I recommend lifting and then sort of use throttle control to point your car just onto the sand and give yourself a nice angle for this left hander here. Try and cut out as much as possible without getting disqualified. Just before the 300 board, brake really heavily, bring yourself down the gears. I recommend you can either drop it into first and short shift to second, or just keep it in second like I did here. Then use your throttle control on exit. Don't go too wide because it will disqualify you if you go over that white line there. Full acceleration out, and you should be able to get this one. Again, quite a tricky one, maybe not as difficult as the Ferrari F12, but definitely in terms of being a heavy vehicle on not the fastest of tires, it was made more difficult by that. On to Master A7 next, Racing Line Intermediate 2. This time we're using the BMW M3 at Dragon Trail Gardens. Now this one here, I believe I did get first time. It wasn't too difficult. Obviously rear wheel drive car this time around, a little bit more sketchy in terms of its handling. However, to be honest, I feel like it was a lot more lenient than it should have been with the overall time. So bring it over to the left. Then where the sort of sand meets, just before that, you want to brake heavy, whip it round to the right, get yourself up on the curb, keep heading to the right hand side, and then once again braking zone for the left. Bring yourself up over the curb if you can. If you can't, just do what I did here. Run it wide onto the curb. It's not going to disqualify you. And then flat out there to the finish. Rather quite an easy one. Again, quite lenient to say. Absolutely butchered one of the apexes there. But an 18.428 will get myself the gold. As you can see, gold time 18.450. Moving on next to Racing Line Intermediate 3. This is Master A8 with the R33 GTR from 1997 at Lake Maggiore. Now, the kind of main issue you've got, well, not issue you've got here, should I say, the main thing you've got here is 4-wheel drive. This car is rather quite decent on its handling. The main thing really is the throttle control. So head all the way over to the right, get yourself as close to the curb as possible, brake, lift, and then just bring throttle control in, get yourself up over the curb. Again, it won't disqualify you. It's really quite lenient with the curbs themselves. Little bit more throttle over this curb, and then you're going to get into the left hander and lift just slightly before bringing in the power once again. Don't go too wide here, or else it will disqualify you. As you can see, if you're going to get yourself into that grass or on the barrier, it's going to be an instant failure. However, full throttle at that point all the way to the finish, and you should be able to get this one nice and easily. So cross the line with a 25.168 with a gold target time of a 25.200. So again, rather quite lenient. Wasn't the best runs. I was being more kind of aware of the sort of lines on that final left-hander. So Master A9 is going to be cornering Intermediate 1 on wet tracks. This time using the Porsche 911 Carrera RS. Not the best of mixers. However, if you've run Tokyo Grand before, then you pretty much know what to expect here. I feel like I've been kind of trained well for this one. Took me a couple of goes. The main issue was sort of slipping on the left-hander before you have to go absolutely flat out. So look for the 200 board. Brake just kind of between that and the 200 to 150 board. Brake as heavily as possible. Try not to scrape the wall or else it will disqualify you. Bring yourself down the gears. I recommend getting it into first gear, get the car rotating inwards. You don't necessarily have to run as deep as I do here. Again, I was almost disqualified there, but then I short shifted up, and that's going to cause the rear end to kick out. However, we do have plenty enough grip. Try and avoid the curb there on the left. As you can see, I only slightly touched it and it managed to rotate the rear end out. So short shifting there to retain grip, absolutely flat out, rather quite lenient. Like I said, the main tricky part is actually the fact of the curbs are extremely wet and it is going to cause the car to slip out. If you can, try and avoid that final left-hand curb because it will kick your car out and there is a chance you're going to end up in the barrier. So let's move on to the final exam for this one. This is Master A10 using the Mercedes AMG GT Black Series. Once again, autopolis, and it's going to be a fairly difficult string of corners here. So we're going to start off where we started off with where we ended with the hairpin at the downhill section. On your left-hand side, it's a relatively easy section. Just brake at the 100 board, bring the car in, get it up over the curb, get it out nice and wide, brake just as the curb ends there, bring it across to the right-hand side, up over the curb, accelerate upwards, and now this is where I'm going to slow it down because this is where it can get rather quite awkward. Over to the left-hand side, run the curb, and then straight away turn to the right. You're going to be having to bring the brakes on here. As you can see, I'm just kind of, sort of tapping them to get the rear end to rotate. Again, sort of aim outwards and then back inwards and try and get yourself as straight as possible for this section here. Throttle control and then full throttle up over the curb. Once again, aiming out nice and wide. Bring the sort of throttle control back in and a bit of a lift. This should give you a nice angle for the left-hander. As you can see though, I did end up breaking traction, and that's going to cause it to look a little bit awkward there, but we did manage to keep the car under control. Now it's all about sort of balancing the brakes and the throttle control through here. If you overdo it, you're going to run wide into the gravel, and if you go too slow, then, well, you're going to lose plenty of time. On exit, full throttle up over the curb. Once again, just losing a bit of traction there, but managing to keep the car under control, and it's absolutely flat out to the line for a 48.409, with the gold target being a 48.480. Rather quite lenient with the time. It certainly wasn't my fastest run. I could definitely make up plenty of time on that one, but that is going to give us our National A Master license. For all bronze, you're going to receive a 6-star roulette engine ticket, which is rather quite a decent reward, and there's some decent engine swaps you can probably get with this one. However, for getting all of the gold, you are going to get a reward vehicle once again, and this time it's going to be in the form of, once again, the final exam vehicle, the Mercedes AMG GT Black Series that we've just used. A decent car, a very powerful road car, and probably the best of the AMG road going vehicles that we do have in the game. So 719 brake horsepower, 1500 kilogram turbocharged. It's an absolute beast and definitely a worthy reward. So overall, these ones just weren't too difficult. I'd actually say I had more of a problem with the B license than I did the A. There's just a couple you need to watch out for, mainly the one with the Ferrari. I think that's number, I want to say A4, and I think A6 with the Genesis. They're probably the worst of the two in terms of just overall difficulty. One, mainly because it's all enclosed, and the other because that Genesis weighs an absolute ton. It's absolutely ridiculous in terms of the weight, so getting that car to rotate can be quite difficult, especially, as well as under braking. So hopefully this guide does help you out with your Master National A license. We'll move on to the IB license next, or International B, and we'll get through that one. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.